You tell yourself you're fine. You laugh at the right moments, show up on time, and keep life moving. But somewhere beneath the surface, there's a weight pressing down, not the kind people can see, but the kind that only you feel late at night. It's the unease that no success erases, the hollowness no distraction fills. What if that feeling isn't weakness? What if it's a message from the parts of you you've locked away? Philosophy has always wrestled with the tension between appearance and reality. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And yet, how many of us are living exactly that, examined only on the surface, polished for others, but ignored at the core? We bury parts of ourselves, telling the world we're whole, while secretly fearing the cracks will show. This buried self is what Carl Jung called the shadow. But philosophers before and after him had their own words for it. Plato spoke of prisoners in a cave mistaking shadows for truth. Nietzsche warned of the danger of denying our instincts, and Kierkegaard described despair as being out of alignment with one's true self. Different words, same insight. When we deny parts of ourselves, we don't escape them, they rule us silently. Think about it. The anger you repress doesn't vanish. It turns into bitterness. The grief you avoid leaks out in numbness. The desires you deny resurface in envy. You think you're in control, but in truth, you've become a stage actor in a play you didn't write. And the longer you keep the mask on, the more you forget what your real face looks like. Here's the paradox. You hide to survive, but what you hide slowly takes your life away. Maybe you learned as a child to play the peacekeeper, or the overachiever, or the invisible one who blended in. Those roles weren't chosen. They were survival strategies. But years later, they've hardened into your identity. You call them me, but they're not you. They're costumes you wore to earn safety and love. Kierkegaard called this the sickness unto death, not physical death, but the slow dying of the self that comes from despair, from being estranged from who you really are. And yet, what's more terrifying than taking that mask off? To shed it is to risk rejection, conflict, or even the loss of belonging. That's why many never do it. They cling to their cage because it feels safer than freedom. And here's where philosophy gives us a brutal but liberating truth. Freedom isn't comfort. Freedom is responsibility. It's the responsibility to stop blaming fate, parents, society, or circumstance, and to face the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Nietzsche once said, "He who fights with monsters must be careful lest he thereby become a monster." And if you gaze long into the abyss gazes back. The abyss is not out there, it's in here. It's the parts of ourselves we've never dared to look at. But what if those parts aren't monsters? What if they are abandoned children, fragments of your own soul left in the dark, waiting for you to finally turn toward them? Anger once kept you safe. Grief once gave depth to your love. Fear once taught you to pay attention. Even the traits you hate in yourself were once strategies for survival. The shadow isn't an enemy. It's a teacher. Still, embracing the shadow doesn't come without pain. As Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. That pain is the doorway to authenticity. It's the moment you realize that healing isn't about fixing a broken self. It's about reclaiming the self you abandoned. You weren't broken. You were buried. So how do we begin? First, by noticing the patterns. Watch how you react when criticized. Notice the triggers that make you shut down, the moments you self-sabotage just when things are going well. These are the footprints of the shadow. They reveal what you've avoided. The question is, will you have the courage to follow them inward? Because here's the truth. Most of us would rather repeat painful cycles than confront them. It feels easier to blame the boss, the ex, or the world than to admit, maybe I am the one keeping myself stuck. But as long as you avoid, you attract the same lessons in new disguises. The philosopher Heraclitus said, "Character is destiny. Until you face what's hidden, you'll call your own patterns fate." This isn't just psychology, it's philosophy of existence. Heidegger spoke of authenticity as living with awareness of your finite, fragile, individual self, not hiding behind roles and social scripts. Sartre declared that we are condemned to be free, that is, we can't escape responsibility for who we become. To live authentically is to stop pretending and start choosing. But let's be clear, choosing authenticity doesn't feel like bliss. It feels like grief. Because when you stop playing roles, you mourn the version of you who only existed to please others. You grieve the years lost to pretending. You even feel grief for the relationships that thrived on your mask but falter when you reveal your truth. That's why many stop halfway. Awareness hurts. And yet, staying asleep hurts more. The journey inward is not glamorous. It's not a wellness routine or a motivational slogan. It looks like sitting in silence with the parts of yourself you've avoided. It looks like trembling in vulnerability when you finally speak the truth you swore you'd keep hidden. It looks like standing in uncertainty with no role to play, no script to hide behind. That's what real courage is, and in that raw space, something shifts. You begin to notice the pause between the trigger and your reaction. You feel the old urge to people please, but you choose differently. You sense fear rising, but instead of fleeing, you step forward. That pause, that single heartbeat of awareness, is where freedom is born, not in erasing the shadow, but in walking with it. The Stoics spoke of freedom not as the absence of hardship, but as mastery of the self. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True mastery isn't about domination, it's about integration. It's the ability to sit with your jealousy without letting it define you, to feel your anger without letting it control you, to hold your grief without drowning in it. That is what it means to become whole. But let's push deeper. What if the shadow isn't just personal? What if it's cultural? Societies too wear masks. Nations bury their injustices. Communities deny their wounds. Cultures suppress the voices that threaten their myths. And just like individuals, what a society represses festers. It erupts as conflict, prejudice, division. To heal collectively, we must also confront our shared shadow. Philosophy then becomes more than personal therapy. It becomes collective awakening, to look honestly at history, to admit mistakes, to reclaim silenced voices. This too is shadow work. As Jung suggested, the fate of the world may depend on the psychology of the individual. A society that refuses its shadow repeats its errors, just like a person does. So where does that leave you? Here and now, with a choice. To keep playing the role, repeating the pattern, carrying the weight, or to stop. To ask the terrifying question, who am I when I'm not performing? Who am I when I no longer need the mask? The answer won't come quickly. It won't arrive as a lightning bolt of clarity. It will emerge slowly, in moments when you stop running, when you sit in the ache instead of numbing it, when you dare to speak the truth even if your voice shakes, when you let yourself be seen, not as polished, but as real. And that's when you realize something profound. The self you thought was lost was never gone. It was waiting beneath the rubble of conditioning, shame, and silence. The quiet ache you've always felt, that was your soul calling you home. And for the first time, you hear it clearly. Kierkegaard said, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. But finding yourself, that happens quietly too, not in grand declarations, but in the subtle return to honesty, the soft strength of finally choosing you." So let's return to the beginning. You tell yourself you're fine, but what if fine is just the mask? What if beneath the silence and the smile, there's a voice still waiting to be heard? You don't have to keep hiding. You don't have to keep betraying the one person you can never escape, yourself. Healing, then, isn't about becoming someone better. It's about becoming someone real. Not fixed, not flawless, just whole. The shadow, once feared, becomes the doorway to that wholeness. And once you walk through, you realize the truth. You were never broken, you were only buried, and it's time to come back to life. If this reflection resonated with you, consider subscribing. Each time you do, it reminds me that these words aren't echoing into the void, they're reaching someone who's searching just like I am. Together, we can keep asking the deeper questions, peeling back the masks, and finding what's real beneath the noise. Because philosophy isn't just an idea, it's a path back to yourself.